Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today is January 17th. Jeff Hoffman is signing with the Blue Jays. Jesse Winker is back with the Mets, plus a lot more. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven. This is the middle of the order. How are we doing today? This week in baseball was an interesting one. We've got a lot on the agenda and potentially even more depending on how this morning shapes up. I've got some news to follow as the morning unfolds. Potentially a big signing happening very soon. So we'll have to see about that. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later. But for now, let's get into the thick of it and start talking about the baseball news. We're going to start north of the border. We're going to Canada to talk about the Toronto Blue Jays and their acquisition to assign Jeff Hoffman on a 3-year deal worth $33 million. Now, this is a very interesting deal. Jeff Hoffman, he's been around the league for some time, debuting with the Rockies all the way back in 2016. And if you're a pitcher for the Rockies, how do you think his career went? Well, I'll tell you, based off of the ERA alone, 4.88 in his debut year, 5.89, 9.35, 6.56, 9.28, 4.56, and that was that first year with Cincinnati after COVID. Basically, Hoffman's kind of been a pitcher who has struggled and has had a lot of, poor years, I would say. He always tried as a starter, when he was with Colorado. His 5 years spent with Colorado, his ERA was 6.4 with a 10-16 record, 68 games, 39 starts. And then when he went over to Cincinnati, he saw, a little bit more bullpen time, and he did a little bit better in those 2 years with the Reds. Went 5-5, a 4.28 ERA. He played 66 games with the Reds, and 12 of them were starts. So you can kind of see the trend here. But then in 2023, last year, or I guess 2 years ago now, the Phillies brought him in, and they said, you know what, we like you, but not as a starter. We're going to put you in the bullpen. You're going to try your best and see how you do. Well, without a doubt, he had the best season of his career, a 2.41 ERA. He played 54 games, didn't make a single start, recorded his second ever career save. He went 5-2, and he was damn good for the Phillies that year. Last year with them, maybe even better. A 2.17 ERA, 3-3 record. He pitched 68 games for the Phillies, and by the way, he made his first All-Star appearance. The best years of his career are now as he enters his 30s. And with the Phillies, he's been very good those 2 years. 122 games, 2.28 ERA. That puts his years in Colorado and in Cincinnati to shame. And the Blue Jays obviously need bullpen help, so why not take a chance on a guy who, in his last 2 years, has been one of the best pitchers in baseball coming out of that bullpen. Not sure if he's going to be used in the closer role. They sure are paying him like he is going to be kind of that high-end talent coming out of the closer role, potentially get in the 8th or 9th innings. What makes this deal very interesting, actually, is that he wasn't supposed to sign with the Blue Jays at all. You see, there was 2 other teams in the running for Jeff Hoffman. The Braves and the Oilers had deals in place, but Jeff Hoffman had failed his physicals. His MRI showed issues with his pitching arm, and both Baltimore and Atlanta backed out of the deal. We kind of have an idea of what the deals would have been. The Braves, I believe, were the closest in signing him a 5-year deal with somewhere between the 45 and 48 million range, while Baltimore had a very similar deal to the Blue Jays, a 3-year deal worth 40 million, so an extra 7 million that Baltimore was willing to spend. So, Hoffman gets, denied by the O's and the Braves here, and then he ends up heading to Toronto, who, with their physicals, maybe they're a little bit lighter on, or just they're taking the chance. They need to sign some guys, and if that's what it takes sometimes, then you got to take a risk on it. We saw Toronto do this with Kirby Yates one year, that a team had walked away, failed his physical. They had done their own. They didn't like what they saw, but they still decided to take the chance on Kirby Yates, signed him. He never played a game with Toronto before moving on. So, it's a risk. It's, backfired on the Blue Jays before. But I think the talent's there. Hoffman, in his press conference when he was announced, said his arm was all good, says he's, going to be ready to go, and he's ready to help the Jays out. So we'll have to see kind of what kind of year Hoffman ends up having. Will he can continue his success like he had to the Phillies the past 2 years? Will he go back to kind of being at Colorado and Cincy? I think it's different because, you go from starting pitching to bullpen, and obviously the workload is extremely different. So I think Hoffman will still be good. I don't know if he'll be as good as his Philly years because, when you got a flow and you've got a great team behind you, it's easy to kind of get in a rhythm. It's going to be different. It's going to be the first time he's going to be in the AL, Rockies, Reds, Phillies. He went NL West, NL Central, NL East. Now he's heading to the AL for the first time, and that will make a difference because, when he's with the Phillies, you're playing the Marlins, you're playing the Nationals. You have a couple of some bird teams even. You have more games against the Rockies. For Hoffman now, you're going to the Yankees with Judge, and you're going to the Red Sox with Devers, and you're going to Baltimore with Gunnar and Adley. So the teams that he'll end up facing the most will differ. I don't know if he'll have that kind of outstanding season like he has with the Phillies, but I still think he'll have a good season. I think it could be worth the money depending on how healthy he can stay, depending on how good he can pitch in these 3 years. But the Blue Jays aren't done yet with, guys like Vlad and Bo. It's going to be a very interesting year for the Blue Jays. They're definitely a team to keep your eyes out on. And speaking of the Blue Jays here, we're going to move on because we've got some more news to talk about. About a week ago, there was reports that Roki Sasaki, the Japanese pitcher that everybody wants to sign because he's super young and super talented. Yeah, that guy. He started to announce that certain teams were out on him. It was one day, I just remember, every time I'd open my phone, I'd see Roki Sasaki has announced he will not be signing with the Yankees. He has announced he is not going to be signing with the Mets or the Giants or the D-backs or the Rangers. And it was kind of fun because it was kind of like he was dumb, like just, you're gone. Kind of like elimination style, a reality TV show kind of thing. It was just kind of a fun way to start knocking off teams, and I was kind of hoping he'd continue it on until we got to just one. He ended up skipping a few. He announced singly 6 or 7 teams, and then when he got to the 23, he was just like, yeah, okay, you know what, we're just gonna go to the finalists because who cares about all the fluff in between here. And the finalists, those 3 teams, were the San Diego Padres, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and those Toronto Blue Jays. Those are the 3 teams that Sasaki announced will be his most definite final landing spots and will be making his major league debut with one of those 3 teams. Well, just before I started recording this episode, I went on Instagram just to make sure that I wasn't going to miss any news because sometimes that happens. And thankfully, I did that because that exact thing happened. The report that I saw, going from 3 teams down to 2 because it was announced this morning, I guess, by the sources, that Sasaki has told the Padres that they are out on him, which is very interesting because that means we're down to the Blue Jays and the Dodgers. So if you're pretty much any fan from any team that isn't the Dodgers, you kind of hope the Blue Jays sign Roki Sasaki, of course. And if you're a Dodgers fan, you're very confident that you'll be signing Roki Sasaki. The last time the Blue Jays and Dodgers were the final 2 bidders on a Japanese player, you have to go all the way back to last year with Ohtani. So, The Dodgers probably feel very good about themselves because they've been in bidding wars with the Blue Jays before. Not saying this is exactly the same thing because you have, you're going from an established two-way player superstar to a young kid who has all the talent in the world, it seems like. If you do not remember Roki Sasaki, if you're like, an average baseball fan who's just trying to get into it a little bit more, and you're like, why does everyone keep talking about Roki Sasaki? Like, who is this guy? Search up the World Baseball Classics, the most recent World Baseball Classic, and watch this guy pitch because the stuff that he was throwing was absolute filth. This guy, for at the time, I think he was 2021. I think it was 2-3 years ago. The World Baseball Classic ran. For being 21 years old, the way he was making some of these major league hitters look ridiculous. I mean, this guy, of course he's young and it's a different league when you're going from, the NBP to the major leagues, but like he could well make his name for himself this year, whether it's with the Dodgers, whether it's with the Blue Jays. I mean, if he goes to the Blue Jays, he's, the third starter, even maybe the fourth starter there in a they got Barrios and Bassett and guys there. The Dodgers, I mean, I'd be very interested to see how the Dodgers would pitch him because obviously you have, what would I call an elite rotation led by Glass now. By the way, you went out and spent a lot of money on Blake Snell, and you still have, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, will Shohei be healthy, ready to go? How are the guys hurt? Gavin Stone, Emmett Sheehan, River Ryan. So, there is a lot of, Dodgers pitchers. So where do you kind of use Roki, or do you go to a 7-man rotation kind of thing, or how does this work? You let one guy pitch every 4 days, one guy pitch every 6 days. It will be interesting to see how the Dodgers end up using Roki if they do end up getting him, which I mean you could say is a likely chance here. When I think of the Blue Jays, you think of, all of their recent, I wouldn't say failures, but they can't close a deal. People don't want to play for the Blue Jays. How much of that is on them versus how much of it is just being, the lone team in Canada? It's just different when you're playing for the Blue Jays. And I think players know this, and I think, some players who, have been born in America and have spent their whole lives living in America, to make the switch now to Toronto and to change to Canada, it's similar but different, and I think that's sometimes why it is harder for the Jays to sign those big free agents, which is why they have more international players, which is why they have to make more trades to get a good competitive team, because when it comes to free agency, they tend to struggle. We saw an uptick in recent years when they went out and grabbed Bassett, they grabbed Springer. This kind of all started back in 2020 when they went and signed Ryu. So it's been an interesting year, an interesting couple of years for the Blue Jays. Some ups, some downs, but like we said, right now with the Vlad extension, in the looms. The Bo Bichette final year, this is kind of if you want to make or break year, this is the year. We can see a Toronto team come out of the gates and just look complete and look locked in and look like they're on a mission. We could tune in to a Blue Jays team at the start of the year who have no identity and are lost and are just throwing things at a canvas and hoping it sticks, and that won't work, and that will end up in a possible Bichette trade, and that could end up in a possible Vlad trade. So the Jays are in an interesting situation. The Dodgers, obviously, the more the merrier for the Dodgers. The Jays really need this one. They need to sign Roki Sasaki at this point. And not to get hopes up, because, if you're a Jays fan, you shouldn't have your hopes up right now. Not until the report says Roki Sasaki has signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. Until you see that report, you cannot have hopes that you guys will be the team that signs Roki Sasaki. But, for baseball's sake and for, a lot of fan bases, they're certainly hoping that you are the team to do so. But don't get to, okay, there's no way the Dodgers get another one. He's coming to Toronto. That's not the case, and so just something to keep your eyes out for as this comes down to the wire here. Of course, Roki Sasaki has until January 23rd, so about 6 days left to sign with assumingly the Dodgers or the Blue Jays here. I'm currently kind of just checking things out and seeing if Roki has signed. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be, much sooner than you think. Going from the Padres and, the Blue Jays and Dodgers down to getting rid of the Padres here, when you're eliminating a team in the finals, you got the final two right now. You got a week to make a decision. What's it going to come down to? So very interesting to see what will happen with Roki Sasaki here. I will say this, though. I will very likely, most definitely, be doing an episode Monday if Roki Sasaki signs this weekend. If he signs, whether it's today after I finish recording, or if it is, Saturday or Sunday. If I know by Monday where he's going to be playing, I will do a short 10-minute episode, whatever, give or take 10-15 minute, just talking about Roki Sasaki, talking about the decision, talking about the team he's going to, and figuring out all that stuff. But if not, if he ends up signing on Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll talk about that. That'll be the headliner Friday. But either way, the next episode we will be talking about Roki Sasaki and his final decision, whether he signed or whether he didn't sign, or which team he signed. Whatever the situation is, whatever happens, Roki Sasaki is going to be the headline of next episode. So keep that in mind here as we move forward, because we'll be talking about the Mets and somehow still talking about the Blue Jays here. The Jesse Winker is back with the New York Mets. And how about that? He signs back a one-year deal with $7.5 million. There's apparently $1.5 million via incentives on the table for him as well. The Mets had a lot to say yesterday while announcing the news of Jesse Winker. Of course, if you forget, Jesse Winker, once a great player, especially with Cincinnati. When he debuted in 2017, he was great. 904 OPS. 2018 with the Reds, a 836. 2019, an 830. 2020, shortened season, still 932. 2021, he was his first and so far only All-Star appearance. His OPS 9.5. He had 24 home runs, the most in his career by far. Kind of his best year, not kind of his best year of his big league career. He had a career high 71 RBIs. Career high in hits 129, career high in runs 77. So kind of just the best year of his career there. And the Reds kind of sold him at the right time, because they traded him to Seattle. And for the first time in his big league career, his OPS was below league average, was below 800. It went all the way down to his 688 when he was with the Mariners. It was a tough 2022 there for Jesse Winker. We've seen players kind of struggle in Seattle in their first or second year. Of course, there was reports that hitting in T-Mobile Park and in Seattle is a lot harder for hitters sometimes. So that's been a report. That's been something that is kind of known about. Struggled in Seattle. They move on for him. He heads to Milwaukee in 2023, trying to reshape himself, and he gets worse. It's a 567 OPS. He only had one home run in 2023, and a batting average is below 200. Just wasn't great. Signed a one-year deal with the Nationals last year, hoping to, bounce back to those days in Cincinnati. And he did bounce back a little bit in his time with Washington. Played 101 games. He had 11 home runs. He had an OPS at 793. He was much better. And, the Mets saw this. They traded for Jesse Winker. He played 44 games when he went to the Mets last year. 243 batting average, a 683 OPS, so got a little bit worse, but still had the best year of his career since leaving Cincinnati in 2021. He finished 2020-24. 2020-2024, is that what I said? He finished in 2024 with 14 home runs, 58 RBIs, a 764 OPS, his highest OPS since that 2021 best season of his career. And he's back with the Mets. the numbers would dictate, he's a kind of hitter. 7.5 seems a little expensive, but he was a lot more than that to the Mets and a lot more than that to the fan base. He was kind of, I would say, a leader in a way. Not your typical leader, but he was a spark. He was a fire that really boasted that Mets team. It got guys like Alonso and Lindor and McNeil and Jose Iglesias. And they went to the NL Central, the NL Championship Series. So, he's the spark guy. He had a crazy walk-off home run. I think that's what Mets fans will remember him most for. So, you bring him back. You hope that he's able to kind of maintain himself over 162 and have a decent year again. The Mets also came out and a couple days ago even, and this was all about Vladdy here in Alonso. Apparently, with the Blue Jays struggling to get Vladdy into a contract extension, the Mets saw this opportunity to create a package to offer the Toronto Blue Jays for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now, this is all kind of mind game-ish because for me, it's like, okay, are the Mets doing that because they want Alonso to sign with them faster? Are they doing that because they generally are moving on from Alonso? Like, what the situation is here? Are they doing it because they want, Vladdy to see that there's other options and to make free agency and to not sign an extension because then they can offer him a bunch of money next offseason and he can go to New York? And I don't know what the situation is there, but what I do know is that after Jesse Winker signed, the Mets came out and said, yeah, you kind of have a little bit of time here before we officially move on from you. And I think that's kind of what the plan is for the Mets. It seems like in 2025, we'll be living in a Mets and Pete Alonso era where they are not together. So, you got Francisco Lindor at short, Soto in right field. As of right now, I guess you move Mark Vientos from third base to first base. You put Nimmo in left. You have Alvarez behind the plate. They traded for Jose Siri earlier in the year, so he plays center. You get Brett Beatty at third. I'm not sure if I mentioned McNeil at second. I think I did. And I think, Francisco Alvarez at catcher. And then you can put Jesse Winker as your DH. And that's kind of what the Mets lineup is looking like for 2025 as of right now. Of course, they can go out and sign at first baseman. They can go out and trade for one. If they end up trading for Vladdy, that kind of makes or breaks that team. And then you put Vientos back at third, and Brett Brady becomes kind of the bench guy again. So it'd be interesting to see, but it seems like the Mets are moving on from Pete Alonso, which has some Mets fans kind of worried, which has some Mets fans kind of excited. It's kind of a risk, but Pete Alonso is kind of still out there. So where will he end up signing? Because it seems like it will not be with the Mets. Just want to talk about that briefly here as we continue, because we've got some more signings that happened this previous week here. Seattle Mariners, they did something for once. They went out and signed Donovan Solano, a one-year deal worth $3.5 million. Solano, you kind of go in and out on this guy because this guy comes into the league every so often, plays really well, and kind of disappears a little bit. 2012, he made his debut at 24. Do I remember that? Heck no. He was with Miami 4 years. Then in 2016, he played 9 games with the Yankees before leaving Major League Baseball. Did not play in 2017. Did not play in 2018. But in 2019, welcome back to the league, Donovan Solano at the age of 31 with the Giants, and had a great year. Not a power hitter by any means, but highest batting average of his career so far at 330. An 815 OPS. He kind of made the league notice him again. In 2020, he was a silver slugger. Yes, it was the COVID year, but he was very good that year. A 326 batting average and a 828 OPS, his highest OPS in his career so far. And then 2021, he spent that magical year with the Giants. He was a big contributor there, but obviously, it was a very weird year for the Giants. From there, he's played 1 year, one team since. In 2022, he was with the Reds. In 2023, he was with the Twins. And in 2024, he was with the Padres. The most games he'd ever played was that 2023 year with Minnesota. Played 134 games. He had 5 home runs, 111 hits. The most hits he'd ever had in his career, a 282 average and a 760 OPS. The other 2 years with the Reds in 2022 and the Padres last year didn't even get over 100 games, but, is a nice backup first baseman, second baseman option. Usually uses first baseman, sometimes even a DH. Not the best defensively, but has a nice stick, can likes to poke the ball and find little gaps and holes in the infield and the outfield. So a decent bat there for Seattle. If they plan on using him as a starter, I don't know how much I like it too much. For 3.5, if, you're saying that's your starting first baseman, I'll sit around and I'll give my head a little scratch here, whether it's first base, whether it's, second base, or for some reason, third even. I don't know if he'd be able to play third, but or how that would look there. But it's something to keep in mind out for as he heads to Seattle. It's kind of the first kind of addition they've had all off season. They're a young team. They have people who have still been around and who have guys who have been on contracts. The rotation is still as solid as it's going to be. There's still, improvements to make offensively, though. And is Donovan Solano the answer? I mean, I think you still try to go get Bregman. I think that would be really helpful. Maybe you go get Alonso if you can. I don't know who else would be a great fit for Seattle here, but yeah, there's still holes there. Anthony Santander, Jerickson Profar could be an addition. Hassan Kim ? Jose Iglesias maybe, Paul DeYoung, Randall Grichuk. So there's still options. I feel like the Mariners can make. I think you need your one big bat away, from looking very good, because their rotation is probably top 3 in baseball still. But it was that offense that was very lackluster last year. So we'll have to see how that goes for them. The other signing that happened, or at least kind of major signing, I guess, Jorge Lopez is signing with the Nationals. It's a 1-year deal worth $3 million. Of course, if you don't remember Jorge Lopez, he got himself into a little bit of a interesting situation last year with the Mets and the Cubs. Reporters took his comments and twisted words, and it got him kind of DFA'd by the Mets. He ended up in Chicago, where he was okay, not really the best teammate apparently from reports, but he is a reliable reliever kind of. We've seen his numbers, up and down year and year. He's jumped a bunch. He made his debut in 2015 with the Brewers, and from there, 2018 he got traded. He's played 2 teams. 2020 he's played on 2 teams. 2022 he played on 2 teams. 2023 he played on 3 teams. So he hasn't been with a team for a full season. You got to go all the way back to 2021 with Baltimore. He played a full season there, 33 games, and of course this was when he was a starter still. So he had 25 starts and a 6.07 ERA. He was 3-14. Probably looked done. Baltimore said, we're going to move you to the bullpen, and that kind of changed the flow and the direction of his career, because in that year in 2022 it was his only all-star appearance, and he was damn good with Baltimore. Played 44 games for them, a 1.68 ERA. Of course, this was before Baltimore had Gunnar and Adley kind of like teaming up, and Baltimore was very good. So when you have a reliever who's, 1.68 ERA and an all-star, yeah, you look to trade him, and they did that. They traded him to the Twins, where for the rest of that season, he stunk. 23 games with Minnesota, a 4.34 ERA. And it's been weird since. Last year in 2023, he played with the Twins, started out with there. Traded to Miami, and then actually traded back to Baltimore. And, kind of struggled all year long, finished with a 5.95 ERA. All 3 of those teams it was not the best on. But then last year signed with the Mets, had a decent showing in 28 games, a 3.76 ERA. Looked good. The things happen with the reporters. He ends up getting kicked off the team. He ends up dealing to Chicago, the Cubs, where in 24 games he pitched to a 2.03 ERA. So last year as a whole, a 2.89 ERA. ERA guy. 52 games, played, 4 saves. He was very good, and he only gave up 6 home runs. So, what kind of season will he have in 2025 with the Nationals is the big question. Which team will he get traded to eventually if he starts to play well is the bigger question, maybe. So he ends up on the Nationals, and that's all I got to say about Mr. Jorge Lopez. So let's continue and talk about said Cubs that we had just mentioned from his things, because the Cubs have a couple things I want to shout out with the Cubs here. First and foremost, the Cubs and Kyle Tucker avoided arbitration. A $16.5 million deal will be Tucker's salary for his last season before testing free agency. Good for the Cubs for making the deal happen. They locked in at 15. Kyle Tucker locked in at 17.5. So instead of letting it go to arbitration and it being one of those two numbers, Tucker drops his from $1 million. Cubs raise theirs by 1.5, and they meet nicely at $16.5 million. So good for the Cubs, and good for Kyle Tucker. Love to see it. Also for the Cubs, last night they unveiled some new alt uniforms, a nice colored baby blue color that they'll be wearing in 2025. Go and check that out if you haven't seen it. You can search up Cubs new alt, and I'm sure it'll appear, alt uniform. I very much like the uniform. I think it's very nice and very crisp, and I'm excited to see Kyle Tucker and the guys wear it this year. So that's all I really had to say about the Cubs. New uniform and arbitration met with Tucker, so win-wins that way. A couple minor league deals that I saw that I wanted to give a little shout out to here. Martin Maldonado is signing with the Padres. Of course, last year he was with the White Sox, only played 48 games. His OPS 403. Listen, the guy is a great defender. He's a defensive stud. He works very well to pitchers. Will make a great manager one day. He was on that 2022 World Series Astros team. He's won a Gold Glove. I mean, he's been on the Astros. He's been on the Brewers, the Angels, the Royals, the White Sox, the Cubs. He is now on a minor league deal with the Padres. It'd be fun to see him in the big leagues, maybe for a couple games and everything, but offensively, he is the biggest liability there is in baseball. Maybe they're signing him so he can kind of pass on some knowledge and some tutelage to their younger catcher, Luis Campusano, who I like very much. But yeah, Maldonado signs a minor league deal with the Padres. He's not the only catcher on minor league deals. Jorge Alfaro is on a minor league deal with the Brewers, maybe to be kind of battling for that backup role in Milwaukee with William Contreras behind the dish. In 2023, he started the year in Colorado, got dealt to Boston, only played 18 games in 2023. Hasn't really been a notable catcher. He had one kind of strong year, I guess, with Miami in 2019. Had a couple years else in Miami, had 1 year in San Diego that was, kind of memorable for him. He had a fun year there. And, didn't play at all last year, was not part of the big leagues. I'm not sure if he was a part of a team's AAA system or where he was, but he did not get an at-bat in 2024. He's a minor league deal with the Brewers, so he will be competing for, I guess, the backup catcher role. Maybe he will get back to the big leagues for a couple games. And the last minor league deal that happened that I found interesting was Dominic Smith signing with the New York Yankees. Of course, Dominic Smith, that COVID year with the Mets in 2020 was incredible. A 993 OPS. He had 10 home runs, 42 RBIs. He was just so good. He finished top 15 in MVP voting, and from that point on, he hasn't been the same. He struggled with the Mets in his last couple of years with them, struggled with Washington, struggled with Boston, struggled with Cincinnati. Hasn't been the same hitter, but hopefully he can, because I do like Dom Smith. I think he's a great character for baseball, and hopefully he can figure it out and get things working himself with the Yankees there. But that's all the minor league deals that were most notable here as we continue on, because I have some great news, and I mean great news. This is news that makes me very happy. MLB has announced that the two fans that have interfered with Mookie Betts in the World Series game are officially league-wide banned from attending any sort of MLB event here and in the future, which makes me extremely happy, because you know what? there's a level of fandom that goes overboard. And for me, this was 100% it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can do a quick and easy Google search and find the game. And the moment that we're talking about was Game 4. Dodgers were up 3-0 in the series at the time. The Mookie went to go make a running catch in right field. The ball was kind of going out of bounds, but it's still in play. Mookie's able to make the catch. He does so, but then these two fans start grabbing on his arms, pulling him into the stands, trying to rip the ball out of his glove. At that point, the catch is already made. You're already interfering. You guys are ridiculous. You guys are so stupid for that. And that crosses a line. And that was kind of what MLB said as well. I'll lead you the official league note here. On October 29, 2024, during Game 4 of the World Series at Yankee Stadium, you interfered with play by intentionally and forcefully grabbing a player. Your conduct posed a serious risk to the health and safety of the player and went far over the line of acceptable fan behavior. Based on your conduct, Major League Baseball is banning you indefinitely from all MLB stadiums, offices, and other facilities. You are also hereby banned indefinitely from attending any events sponsored by or associated with the MLB. Please be advised that if you are discovered at any MLB property or event, you will be removed from the premises and subject to arrest for trespassing, which, the line right there says it all. Your conduct posed a serious risk to the health and safety of the player and went far over the line of acceptable fan behavior. What happens realistically if when you're yanking on Mookie Betts' arm, you dislocate his shoulder? There was a lot of very bad, could have happened issues there. Thankfully, Mookie was all right. Thankfully, the Dodgers, was able to prove to these Yankees fans, and I'm glad that this news is out because, I was really, that's a problem. So, yeah, these guys can go piss off. Nobody wants people like this at a game. If you're a Yankees fan, you're like, oh, they did nothing wrong. Well, you're an idiot because they did, because that's unacceptable. You can't do that. And that's where the line will end there. And we'll move on here now to kind of, I guess, the last bit of news to talk about here. And this is where an episode always kind of reaches its breaking point because we've got some very sad news here. Bob Uecker has passed away at the age of 90 years old. And if you're not sure who that is, well, he has been the voice of the Milwaukee Brewers for a long, long time. Of course, started out playing in the big leagues. This was well before my years. He made his debut in 1962 and only played for 6 years. Retired in 1967 at, only 6 years. Seemed to be kind of maybe a good catcher frame-wise, but, a 581 OPS, didn't scream any numbers at you, a career 14 home runs. But still, to be able to say that you've been a Major League player, very cool stuff. But he, of course, a few years later, became the voice of the Brewers in 1971. He called mostly their radio games, but he's held that role for 54 years. He was still doing it. He would have still been doing it. Over half a century in the booth. He's called dozens of home run calls. Of course, his iconic, get up. Get out of here, gone. Get out of here. We've seen that. We saw that kind of his last call, really. His last home run call would have been September 2nd with Brewers rookie phenom Jackson Chourio. He had a grand slam, and that was the last home run that Bob Uecker will ever call. Of course, he did call a couple more games from September 2 on, as well as, a couple of the playoff games that they were in, but never saw another home run. Jackson Chourio gets that standing ovation and kind of the last, passing of the torch essentially from 90-year-old, 54 career-wise, in the booth, to the 20-year-old, young kid home run there. It was, kind of a surreal moment that was that, you don't really think about it, but, when things actually happen, that's kind of how it is, of course. MLB posted a video of some of his best calls, and, watching that, like, you hear his voice a lot more present. Like, it's different with when it comes to death here, of course. Prince Fielder's, for me, iconic walk-off home run, the one, down right field line. I miss Prince Fielder, of course, playing baseball. He got to call the NL Central tiebreaker game versus the Cubs. Walk-off home runs from Ryan Braun and Christian Yelich, and it was very cool for the Brewers to be the division champs last year. One last high for him. He was celebrating with the team a lot in their postseason run there. He was a strong guy. He was a baseball Hall of Famer when it came to the broadcasting career. He got that in 2003. And of course, he had a life, man. He served in the Army. On April, in 2010, he had a heart surgery. And then, later on that year, he had another heart surgery in 2010. He had 2 heart surgeries, missed some time, about 3 months away from the booth there. But, fully recovered. Like, that's a big deal for him. He had, it was told last year that he was diagnosed with a lung cancer. And then, of course, unfortunately has passed away yesterday at the age of 90. Passed away, I think the news came out yesterday morning. So it's been about a day, really, since all this had kind of gone down here. But a great name and a great, voice of baseball. So many of these announcers, you kind of know them for their voice, but you don't get to really know them for the person that they are and for their names and all this other stuff. I go around league wide and try to kind of know some of the broadcasting guys because they make the game for me when I'm watching it on TV, or whether I'm watching my favorite team, whether I'm watching just a random game. Like, baseball for me is very entertaining, but there still has those boring moments, and it really is the guys in the booth that can keep you entertained and keep you fixed on the game, telling you stories and reading you facts and stats and all this other stuff. They make or break a game for me. I didn't catch too many Brewers games in my time. And but I do know, how important Bob Uecker was to the Brewers and to their organization there. So rest in peace, Bob Uecker. Thoughts and prayers for the family and for those involved. And who are feeling it most close to the heart there. It's always tough. Of course, this is not even a month since Ricky Henderson passed away, and that's another big loss of the game. So not the ideal start to 2025 that we're looking for, unfortunately, but. Death comes for us all. And I think Bob Uecker would have said that he lived a great life and was surrounded by baseball, the game he loved, and, got to meet so many great people and friends and family that, were a part of his life. So, rest in peace, Bob Uecker. And that's how we'll end the episode. I was thinking, do I want to start with this or I want to end with this? It's just kind of tricky, but that's how we will end today's episode here. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode here. I will mention this very quickly because I just opened my Instagram just to see if there was anything about Roki Sasaki, because that's kind of what the big thing is that we're waiting for here. But it has a report here about Pete Alonso that I'm going to read to you guys really quickly, saying that the latest offer that was rejected by Alonso from the Mets was 3 years, about 68 to 70 million to around 23 million AAV. Apparently, Alonso is seeking a deal at 3 years, which includes opt-outs and a much higher AAV range. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So Pete Alonso signs a 3-year deal worth, $80 million with another team. We'll have to see. Just things to consider there. Pete Alonso and the Mets most likely are done here, and not seeing anything else about Roki Sasaki. So something to consider, potential Monday episode about Roki Sasaki if news breaks that he signs this weekend. If not, well, he'll sign somewhere or he won't sign somewhere. The latest by Thursday, which means Friday. No matter what, the next episode is all about Roki Sasaki. Get excited for that, because that's going to be a good one. I appreciate you all. Thank you, everybody, so much, and I will see you next time.